Wright up on a few good be doing the continued direction to Fink's Wright Ace Attorney. Operation Turnabout, Episode 6 Final. This one's 2 hours and a half long. Holy crap. Yeah, I probably won't add clips to this one because that would take forever to find which spots would be funny to add clips to, so I'm just gonna let this one roll. So, I'm only gonna do this in parts because holy crap, I'm not gonna spend 2.5 goddamn hours doing this. I usually don't like my videos going longer than a half hour. Well, this is important, so let's get to it.
The final day of the trial has arrived.
This is
do
gonna
or
get
die
juicy
today.
Please tell me you've made sense of all this, Mr. Wright. Could really use some reassurance right about now.
Of course. For what it's worth, the new evidence we've collected has certainly undermined the
Why would it
prosecution's
take
theory of
2.5
you murdering
hours
Harvey.
for a trial?
And if we're really lucky,
oh wait, no,
the
this
handwriting analysis
real life
will
is
exonerate you
actually
straight
does
off the
take a long
bat.
time.
It's going to be okay, Mike. Nick has done this 1,000 times before. But if Franziska manages to turn this into a fierce courtroom duel regardless, well, just sit back and enjoy the show.
I think I prefer the more anticlimactic version, thank you very much. Still, I appreciate the reassurance. I feel like I can trust you with my fate, Mr. Wright. I also trust you to keep your promise about Charlie.
And that's what I aim to do. If at all possible, I'll keep your brother's involvement between
How
the
much you
three of
would have
us.
bet the other ladies
Thank you,
you
Mr.
mentioned
Wright.
them?
It's really all I needed to hear.
There's our soldier and his squad
Hey, you
mates.
showed up.
Good morning, Mike, Mr. Wright and Miss Fay.
Hey there, Miss Victoria and Mr. Tennant.
Ma'am, sir, what can I do for you?
Hey, Mike. Always ready for duty, aren't you?
That he is. But to answer your question, November, we're actually here to help you out. See, the lieutenant and I thought you could use some AN-styled inspiration before the trial.
Good to see you both being so supportive. But where's Dr. Siegfried?
From what I've heard, Lady Von Karma has decided to play it safe, and has prepared Jason as a professional witness, in case any more issues about Harvey's health history arise. Nevertheless, he too wishes Mike well.
Yeah. Bones sends his regards and all that, but time's a-wasted. Now for some pre-court training. All right, everyone, let me see your court face.
What?
Court? Face?
The courtroom is a battlefield as much as any other, so surely the ability to intimidate your opponent and break their resolve will come in handy. Like this.
I've been in courts and there people don't emote at all.
More like a crazy person face. Which
And I remember my last
probably
court, it was like over 6 hours long, almost.
If you're quite
So,
done with that training
yeah.
exercise, Tenant. Mike, I'd just like to inform you that I've received word from the rest of the engineering company at the field training camp. I hear most everyone is supportive of you, and from what I've heard, they're planning on throwing you a party to celebrate your exoneration after they wrap up the camp.
Well, gee, I don't know what to say.
Now that's all well and good, but you still need to be found not guilty first.
Yeah.
Hence the question remains, is little boy Blue here a bad enough dude to save November?
Little boy Blue?
Enough, Tenant. Surely Mr. Wright has what it takes. Why don't you have a small chat with Mike while I discuss something with Mr. Wright and Miss Fay?
Got it, Lieutenant. Now let's hone that court face of yours, November!
Sir, yes, sir.
There. Hopefully that will keep them all busy for a while.
Grandpa's gonna
I
take an
don't actually
eternity
have a
in
lot to
bathroom
say.
again.
I just want to let you know that I haven't come clean
Making
to
all
Jason
that
about
ruckus.
Harvey and the Helios 6 incident. Of course, I can't ask you not to bring up the incident, but
I'm gonna be really annoyed if he starts taking a shower late at night again.
Understood. We'll be most discreet about it.
But you will tell him
He
eventually.
probably is.
Won't you, Miss Victoria?
yes. Once the opportunity presents itself, the truth shall be revealed for all to see.
Attention, please! The trial will begin momentarily. If everyone would please head to the courtroom at once so we can lock the doors and get started.
That's our cue. Good luck with the trial, Mr. Wright. We're all counting on you.
All right, Nick. Let's get Mike off the hook, and then we can celebrate his verdict with that trip to Gatewaterland.
Yes, it's time to finish this once and for all. The following hours will be crucial in deciding the fate of Mike November. but proving his innocence...
Are we gonna get to the goddamn court, or are you guys gonna keep talking about nonsense?
...vicious opponent to engage on the field of battle. Nevertheless, with the evidence and information we've gathered, we're finally ready to face her head-on. Two competing interpretations of what transpired that day are to be locked in mortal combat, and ultimately, only one can reign supreme. And we can only work towards making sure that it's the truth.
Not trying to be impatient, but this is 2.5 goddamn hours. Like and subscribe to Lordy Band. This is it. Their video. I've actually, like I said in the past videos, I've never played the game ever. I didn't even know it even existed. I don't get that much.
Court is now back in session for the trial of Mike November. As we know, this is the final day of the trial, therefore a verdict must be reached today. Until then, the courtroom's doors will remain locked. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, are the prosecution and defense ready?
The defense is ready, Your Honor.
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
Let's resume where we left off. Yesterday, two vastly different suicide notes, both allegedly written by the victim, were brought to the court's attention. Miss Von Karma, what were the results of the handwriting analysis performed on them?
After a thorough examination, it was concluded that the note found in the lockbox is definitely a forgery, Your Honor.
A forgery? Oh my. And it was the nicer one of the two. What about the other one?
I'm afraid the results for that one were inconclusive.
Well then, would you care to elaborate on that, Miss Von Karma?
And who wrote the
There are
forgery?
elements that strongly suggest it was written by the victim, but there were also several deviations from his regular penmanship. The analysis result falls on the gray area between genuine and fake.
I'll say, yesterday you were quite certain that it was written by the victim.
And I still am, Your Honor. I'll bet the results were inconclusive. The note most certainly wasn't written by the same person who made the forgery. The analysis would have detected that.
You're saying that it's possible to detect if two handwritten forgeries have been made by the same person?
It is complicated, but possible, Your Honor. If by chance two forgeries were attempting to imitate the same person's handwriting, we can scan them for shared deviations in the penmanship to determine if the forgeries are by the same person. But considering how foolish it would be of the murderer to leave a second note that would conflict so grossly with the first one, and thus wholly defeat the purpose of leaving any in the first place, we can deduce that the second note was, in fact, written by the victim. However, the key finding here is that someone created a forged suicide note in the victim's name, and hid it in his office on the day of the murder. In a blast-proof box, I might add. The only logical reason for doing so is to try and disguise a murder as a suicide.
Hold on! What about the inconclusive note?
The inconclusive note is absolutely worthless because of the existence of the forged one. Since the defense seems dumbfounded as to why, I shall explain it in simple terms so even he will understand. First, the forged note was found in a blast-proof container. Whoever wrote it went the extra mile to ensure that it could survive an explosion and be found intact. Secondly, we know that the note was definitely not written by the victim. The implication is that the person who forged the note knew that there was going to be an explosion in the iron chamber with Captain Harvey as its sole victim. They wanted the forged note to be found and mislead the investigation. Frankly, I posit the second note has nothing to do with the bombing. The existence of this forgery is a clear sign of foul play. Anyone who tries to prove Harvey's death was merely a suicide is thus doing exactly what the murderer wants.
Well, this is quite an interesting turn of events.
Interesting.
Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Wright?
Well, there goes the easy way out.
Nick, what are we going to do now?
obviously we prepare a rebuttal. Let Franziska claim what she wants, because we'll be prepared to shoot down her arguments one by one.
We finally return to the facts that the defense has tried to distract the court from all this time. The only person with established means, motive, and opportunity for this crime is Private Mike November. The only detail that needs to be added to my theory is that he has also forged a suicide note in Captain Harvey's name in a foolish attempt to hide his crime.
I mean, that iPass lady obviously
the
hates
box
it.
itself. You claim Mr. November planted it, but in that case it should also have his fingerprints.
You just had to go there. Of course the police performed an extensive forensic analysis on the box as soon as they could, but thanks to a certain Scruffy's detective's over-eager handling of it, only his prints could be lifted. As for the contents of the box, the only remarkable item was the forged note, unless you're interested in some more plaster dust. Thus everything wraps up nice, simple, and perfect. Mike November is guilty.
I see. What does the defense have to say regarding this matter, Mr. Wright?
Plenty. As far as I can tell, the prosecution has yet to provide tangible evidence that it was in fact Mr. November who forged the note.
Perhaps, but when we take into account the current circumstances, Mike November is the only viable option. Unless you had someone else in mind.
Mr. Wright, if I were you, I would think my next words through very carefully. The past 2 days have not exactly done a lot to improve your infamous reputation as the biggest bluffer this courtroom has ever seen. And frankly, I don't have the patience for any more baseless theories that drag on and ultimately go nowhere. If you are going to claim Mr. November did not forge this letter, I also expect you to prove to the court who did.
And I'd just like to remind you that Captain Harvey has already been ruled out, so you can forget your precious suicide angle.
Very well. All right. The gauntlet has been thrown. Time to counter Franziska's claim. There has to be some sort of explanation for the existence of this note. Mike clearly didn't forge the note.
It was probably the iPass lady.
It does beg the question, who did?
My confession. Earthly courts cannot grant the absolute. Apologize to my victims.
The Helio 6 incident is the key. Mike lost his brother because of it, and the 3 survivors were awarded with the Dove of Fidelity. Now only 2 people remain who know what transpired that day. Lieutenant Irene Victoria and Dr. Jason Siegfried. And there's only one person who could have brought the note to the Iron Chamber on Absolution Day.
iPass
Dr.
lady?
Siegfried.
Huh?
Excuse me, Mr. Wright?
Your Honor, the defense would like to cross-examine Dr. Jason Siegfried.
The doctor? Do you honestly think this will change anything?
We'll find out soon, won't we? Your Honor, I repeat my request. The defense would like to call Dr. Jason Siegfried to the stand.
That is a very bold move to make in your situation, Mr. Wright. Personally, I cannot see how cross-examining the witness again would be relevant.
Agreed. It would be a mere waste of time. I suggest
don't
we
think
proceed
so.
to the verb.
Hold it! I'll do it.
What? What are you doing?
I believe I was quite clear in what I said, Miss Von Karma. I wish to testify.
You sure about this decision, Dr. Siegfried?
Yeah, why is he so
I
anxious to
believe in
talk?
fairness above all, Your Honor. If Mr. Wright's request is to cross-examine me, then I say let him.
This is a colossal waste of time.
Are you in a hurry, Miss Von Karma? There is still plenty of time scheduled for the court proceedings, as far as I know. In my line of work, we like to think that the time spent properly examining a patient is never wasted. Sloppy examination, on the other hand, can lead to a grave misdiagnosis. You seem very convinced that this cross-examination won't change a thing, so why not just sit back and relax while Mr. Wright questions me one final time?
Very well. Let the stubborn fools go for it, for all I care. The evidence speaks for itself.
Yeah, but you don't know what he knows.
So here I am, Mr. Wright. What did you want to ask me?
Dr. Siegfried, we both know who forged this note, don't we?
So, you think you figured it all out then? Marvelous. Why don't you go ahead and tell the court? I'm sure they're anxious to hear.
I can't yet. There's some things I need to clear up with you first.
I see. Better safe than sorry. I do not wish to be an arduous witness, nor do I doubt that you wish to save Mike. But I would also like to make sure that you fully understood what happened on that day and why, before you go ahead with any big reveals. Sounds fair, doesn't it?
Did he do it?
Mr. Wright, I am not sure what you and the witness are talking about, but if you would please get to the point.
Guess we ought to get to it then. Mr. Wright, I'm going to present you with my testimony. Let's see if you can figure out the rest.
Alrighty then.
As you may recall, I was Harvey's first visitor on Absolution Day. However, me seeing Harvey merely proves that I had a window of opportunity to leave the forged note in the iron chamber. This court has yet to establish the proper means and motive for me to do so. But since you claim that I know something about this note or the person who forged it, I'd like to see some evidence in that regard. There. That should give you plenty to go on.
Much obliged, Dr. Siegfried. I promise I won't let Mike down.
Good. Let's hope you can stay true to your word.
I've got to hand it to the doctor. He's taking this surprisingly well.
He is,
Then why doesn't he
considering the
just
grave
confess
implications.
Mr. Wright, please proceed to the cross-examination.
As you may recall, I was Harvey's first visitor on Absolution Day.
Hold it! Any particular reason you wanted to be the first to see Harvey?
It was a simple matter of convenience. I wanted to drop off Harvey's new medication and get the meeting over with as soon as I could, so I could focus on my work at the hospital afterwards. Of course, with Harvey's sudden death, the fact that I met with him did end up making me a potential suspect. However, me seeing Harvey merely proves that I had a window of opportunity to leave the forged note in the iron chamber.
Hold it! Not to mention that this gave you an opportunity to plant an explosive in Harvey's office.
An opportunity, certainly. But if we're going by that logic, Tennant and November are just as likely to have done so.
I'd say the contents of the forged note rules them both out. And they had no reason for leaving such an apologetic note, especially if their presumed motive was revenge.
Ah, so the motive angle comes to play. I see. Speaking of that, this court has yet to establish the proper means and motive for me to do so. But since you claim that I know something about this note or the person who forged it, I'd like to see some evidence in that regard.
You just said that.
Objection! Dr. Siegfried, when visiting your office, one cannot help noticing all the plaster sculptures you've crafted. You're quite the talented artisan.
Thank you for the compliment, but we're not exactly here to exchange pleasantries. Why do you bring this up?
We've established that the bust of Harvey was brought to the scene of the crime on Absolution Day, and since Staff Sergeant Tennant claims to have seen it, there are only two people who could have brought it there, you or Captain Harvey. Yesterday, I was under the impression it must have been Harvey, but that has since changed. There's no way Harvey was the one who made the bust.
Most likely not. Sculpting is something you have to practice a lot to get good at. Still, he might have commissioned a sculptor to immortalize his likeness as if he were some sort of Roman god.
In that case, why would he commission it out of a material he didn't particularly like? Or more importantly, was downright harmful to him? According to his medical records, Captain Harvey had a severe plaster allergy.
Indeed, your logic is sound. Very well. I was indeed the one who crafted the plaster bust of Harvey. A little departing gift I wanted to give to him. But the worst thing he could get from it was a bad itch. However, so far this has all been beside the point. How does this prove I know something about the forged note or its maker?
It becomes pretty apparent once we take a look at this other piece of evidence. Take that!
Oh, that's the box the forged note was found in, correct?
The very same. And not too long ago, we learned a rather interesting detail about it.
Huh?
Plaster dust was also found inside. This creates a clear link between you, the bust, and the forged suicide note, Dr. Siegfried.
Now, let's not be hasty. I know from personal experience that plaster dust has the annoying quality of getting absolutely everywhere. If the box was recovered from the scene, it would be more of a miracle if there wasn't any dust inside.
Even if the box was blast-proof and completely airtight?
Well, it is always possible that the dust got in the box when it was opened at the scene.
But it wasn't. You should remember that the locked box was only opened yesterday in this very courtroom by Detective Gumshoe, which means the plaster Dr. Dust has been sealed inside along with the forged note all this time by you!
So, it has come to this, then. It is actually refreshing that we can finally talk about this without all the pretense of mystery limiting the freedom of our expression. Very well, Mr. Wright. You've convinced me. So here's what you want to hear. I forged Captain Harvey's final words.
You what?
Of course, by confessing to have done so, the implications should remain unclear to no one. It definitely raises a lot of questions.
So you can
I believe now would be a perfect time to ask them.
Why? Why would you do it, Dr. Siegfried?
I didn't want to, but Harvey would have never confessed to have caused the Helio 6 incident. So I forced his hand.
You don't know that. In the end, he might have...
Allow me to stop you right there, Mr. Wright. You do not know Harvey as well as I did. During the past 4 years, he had every opportunity to end this just by saying a few words, but he chose not to. Even on Absolution Day, I gave him a fair chance to come clean.
Is that all? Are we finally done here?
Almost. There's one more thing I'm here for. Absolution.
Absolution. Is that truly what you've come for?
You know exactly what I've come for, sir. I haven't forgotten. About what happened in Aregia. None of us have.
I thought we agreed to never talk about it again.
We won't. This is the last chance to save yourself. The choice is yours. You can cast aside the shameful offer you've been given by the AN and take actual responsibility for your crime. Or you can take that offer and try to run from the truth until your lies inevitably become your downfall.
You want the truth, Siegfried? Then let me tell you one last time. I have done no wrong. And that is exactly what I will tell the AN brass, and I know exactly who will take the fall. I have every intention of taking advantage of the opportunity to leave and
the
forget I
iPad
ever
lady was
knew
going to
any
take the
of
fall
you.
for it.
You're
And he wants to
dismissed.
protect
Get out of
her,
my
so
sight.
he killed him.
So, that is
Protect
how you
her.
choose to end this.
We both know there's nothing you can do. Now leave, soldier.
In that case, farewell, Harvey. Your judgment will come. Sooner or later. But, in the end, you can see which path he chose. Think of the letter as an act of mercy. My attempt to bring peace to the families who have suffered for 4 years because of him. They deserve to hear the truth, even if it was via a comforting lie.
Wait! 4 years? And the list of names? Is this what the notes from the crime scene are referring to?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense looked into it yesterday, and here's what we've learned. 4 years ago, Allied nations began a peace mission in the Republic of Aregia, a nation which was recovering from a bloody civil war. During this operation, experimental equipment was also to be field tested. Among them, a powerful experimental plastic explosive compound, codenamed Helio 6. This compound was designed with user safety in mind and was supplied to several engineer units. Among them, the 1st Special Engineering Company, commanded by Captain Janice Harvey. However, for reasons that elude us to this day, a mass detonation of Helio 6 occurred in the company's explosive depot, resulting in the death of the entire company, save for 3 members, Captain Janice Harvey, Lieutenant Irene Victoria, and Dr. Jason Siegfried. This disaster later became known as the Helio 6 incident. Lieutenant Victoria was severely wounded in the blast. Without Dr. Siegfried's emergency surgery, she too would have been a casualty. She owes the doctor her life. The Allied nations suspected sabotage and launched an internal investigation. An innocent peacekeeper, Charlie November, would have been indicted for the incident hadn't Dr. Siegfried's testimony caused Captain Harvey to become the main suspect instead. Evidence of Harvey's guilt, however, was never found.
November? And that would mean the list of names in the forged note is a list of casualties?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah, but can't
And to
mention
top
his
it all
brother.
off,
He promised.
on this Absolution Day, Harvey was to receive legal immunity for a supposed crime in exchange for a confession. Nobody in the regiment liked Captain Harvey, but Dr. Siegfried and Lieutenant Victoria were the only ones with a burning passion to see him pay for his crime. So how about it, Dr. Siegfried? Is this what you wanted to hear me say?
Yes, this is quite enough, Mr. Wright. I think it is finally time we ended this.
Stop! You can't just... You have a right
Yeah,
against
she's gonna lose.
self-incrimination, witness!
I am most aware of this, Miss Von Karma. If I was a petty man, I would have most likely attempted to claim that I left the forge note there because I anticipated Harvey committing suicide. But I've finally realized something. If I choose to evade the responsibility for my actions, I will be no better than Harvey was. Hence, I have one more confession to make, since I will not have the brother of Charlie November be found guilty of a murder he did not commit. Let it be known that I, Jason Siegfried, took the life of Janice Harvey on Absolution Day, and demand just retribution for my actions.
Well, that was fast.
This confession is worthless! There's no way you could have created the explosive.
Objection! Jason did not have to craft any sort of explosive, because I made it for him. Timer and all.
Oh, they're both guilty.
Irene! I was hoping you wouldn't get involved in this. You've already suffered so much.
Stop acting like I didn't have any role in this. I am not going to let you take the fall for something we both planned and executed together. I am to blame for Harvey's death just as much as you are. Just as we agreed. I made the explosive while you created the sculpture to conceal it in, which you then left in the iron chamber with a fake suicide note. The bomb was set to go off at 12:30 on the dot.
How? But how can this be?
I'm glad that they are finally allowed to get this off their chest.
Yes, they've been hiding it long enough. This confession may mean more to them than it does to us.
Mike, I'm so sorry you got caught up in this.
Everything we've done was in an effort to protect you. That's why I had to intervene on the trial's first day. Why we never told you about being part of the Helios 6 incident. And why I refused to give you the date of Absolution Day when you asked for it. I knew how important it was for you to see Harvey that day, but I did not want to risk putting you anywhere near harm's way.
So that's how it is. I was going to tell you about Arisia after Harvey was gone, I swear. But then all of this happened. When you showed up at the hospital that day and asked to stay in order to see Harvey, I just did not have it in me to deny you. I was hoping Irene could give you some menial task to keep you out of trouble until the coast was clear. But fate had something else in mind. When I found the note you left, I just panicked. I had to get you out of there before it was too late, so I called Harvey's office. At that moment, I realized what
That's
we
what the
thought
phone
had
call
been
was.
justified retribution was nothing more than murder in cold blood. Had fate not been merciful, our bloodlust could have resulted in the death of someone innocent. Someone we had tried our hardest to protect. I couldn't have lived with myself knowing that. I swear, after I realized this, I called Harvey's office again and tried to warn him about the bomb. But the phone line was not functioning. Nevertheless, I kept calling his office in the vain hope he would pick it up before it was too late.
Oh yeah,
Final
because he
attempt
turned
was
the
merely a
the
minute
power
or so
off.
before Mike returned to the barracks. I could have sworn I heard the dialing tone for a second before the line went dead again. Ultimately, I couldn't spare Harvey's life. I shall forfeit my own as penance if that's the judgment I receive.
As shall I. In the end, we failed you, Mike. And I cannot apologize enough for that. We couldn't protect you from Harvey's hazing, or the
Why
false
is
charges
this up to
against
2.5 hours long?
You haven't failed me. You and the rest of the company have been there for me every time I needed you the most. It is what has kept me going in my quest for the truth, and for that I am eternally grateful. The fact that you're both on the stand now is proof enough for me. While it's heartwarming to hear that we ultimately managed to do something right, I still have to apologize for putting you through this hell for the past 3 days. We, too, could have ended this with a few words, but instead we chose to stay silent.
I'm certainly curious as to why. If you truly wanted to protect Mike, why on earth would you lock the box? Or simply not confess immediately?
As far as I am aware, the combination for the box was set to the correct one. Surely the police wouldn't just start all over from zero.
Scruffy!
I see. That does explain a lot, then. As for the confession part, since we could no longer undo what we had done, we hoped that Harvey's death would still be declared a suicide and nobody would have to suffer because of it. There's still so much good we could have done with our lives. Or that's what we thought. Of course, looking back at it now, I can clearly see it is for what it is. Just a thin veil of self-deceit, a foolish assumption that we could keep running from our past misdeeds indefinitely. But no one can escape the ghosts of their own past.
I am sure some of you are wondering what drove us to commit this act. When we heard about Harvey being given legal immunity, it felt like we were spat on the face by the legal system. We simply lost all hope in Harvey being tried, and it was replaced by pure desperation. What had once been something I would vow to defend with my life now seemed like a den of corruption and collusion. I even went as far to suspect Lady Von Karma of withholding evidence, when she did not present the suicide note we left during the very first day of trial. So, instead of trusting the courts, we took matters into our own hands in our misguided search for justice. But none of what we did could ever be called that.
For what it's worth, I forgive you for assuming I played dirty. However, something I cannot look past is your act of vigilantism. Taking another person's life is an unforgivable crime, and you tried to escape unpunished.
Yeah, but that kind of
Tragic
stuff
comic,
happens
you
in our
should put it
world all
like
the
that,
time,
Miss Von
so-
Karma. The Allied nations could never prove it, but I knew that Captain Harvey murdered 24 good people so he could hide his crimes and save himself from a life in prison.
What kind of crimes are you talking about, witness?
Harvey was suspected of explosives trafficking in Aregia. Everyone in his company agreed that he wasn't above it, but I never thought he'd have it in him to kill his own men. Worst yet, he never showed any signs of remorse about it. Instead, he tried blaming the whole incident on Charlie November, then tormented Irene and me with guilt for these 4 long years. This was the man the Allied nations
right,
was going to give legal immunity. We couldn't allow it to happen. We just couldn't let that bastard get away. It's going to be okay, Irene. They know the whole truth now.
No, Jason, you don't understand. There's been something I've been hiding from everyone all
Oh yeah,
this
because
time.
she thinks she's the one
The
who's fault.
true culprit of the Helios 6 incident.
What?
It was my fault. I'm the one to blame, not Harvey. And this photo proves it. See? These chemical detonators were left on top of a Helios 6 crate and they
Yeah,
must have
but
leaked onto
Harvey
the
could have taken the
explosives.
goddamn thing off.
If only I had checked the depot like I was supposed to that day, all those lives would have been spared.
That 2015, that was a long time
I'm
ago.
so sorry.
5 years ago.
When I presented you with the idea of taking Harvey's life, you must have thought that you were paying back Harvey for what he did to me, when in reality I used you for my own selfish ends. To stop Harvey from exposing the truth. He knew what I had done and was using this photo to keep me under his boot. But no more. Now that everyone knows the truth, I am finally free from his grasp. Jason, you should have just let me die that day. It's what I deserved.
Irene,
Yes?
please don't. I just don't want to hear you say another word. We're done here.
This is just so sad. Nick, is there really nothing we can do?
If this is really the truth, we can only offer them our sympathies.
Well, Nick, your job is to make sure it is the truth.
You're right. If I can somehow bring them comfort, I should at least give it a go. Miss Victoria, could I see that photo you showed me once more? I'd like to inspect it in more detail.
Go ahead, if you wish.
Right. Let's see if I can find anything that doesn't add up in this picture. Nothing particularly eye-catching. Except for the detonators on top of the explosives crate. Wait! On top of the crate? Miss Victoria! This photo was originally taken by Captain Harvey, was it not?
Yeah, he could move the goddamn
Yes.
box.
Why do you ask?
Because I believe I can prove Harvey prepared the situation in this photo to be his insurance in order to frame you, when in reality, your actions that day played no part in the Helios 6 incident.
You can?
How?
Simple. There exists a piece of evidence which proves it was Harvey who moved the detonators on top of the crate. Take that! I have here another photo from inside the depot,
Oh, yeah,
taken
the
by
red
Sergeant
paper.
Charlie November. Here we can clearly see that the detonator crate is on the floor.
Charlie took a photo of himself in the depot. Never mind that now. Please, Mr. Wright. I want to believe you, but unless you can prove also that Charlie didn't move the crate himself after taking the photo...
Don't fret. I believe I could do that as well. Dr. Siegfried, can you tell the court why Charlie abandoned his guard duty at the depot to see you that day?
Of course. It was because of the chemical burns on his hand, which he got from attempting to pick up some Helio-6 from the crate. It would have been impossible for him to lift the detonator crate with those burns.
Exactly. In addition, we can see in Harvey's photo that the detonator box is on top of a third unsealed crate. Since the two crates in the other photo were clearly sealed, this had to have been the one Charlie November reached into to burn his hand. And he couldn't have done so if the detonators were on top of the crate at the time. This means the crate was moved by the only other person who went to the depot after Charlie November left to seek medical attention. None other than Captain Janice Harvey, the true culprit behind the Helio-6 incident. Miss Victoria, you've been innocent all this time, and this proves it beyond any doubt.
Wow, Nick! That was downright amazing!
It helps when you have the evidence to back your case for once.
Innocent?
Yes, Irene. You can let it all go now.
I can't even begin to describe how relieved I am.
I kind of figured it was Harvey. I mean, he's kind of a douche.
Mr. Wright, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You may not realize it, but this means the world to me. What you've done today has allowed me to finally triumph over the guilt that has haunted me for years.
You've also brought closure to the families of those affected by the incident and cleared the name of Charlie November.
Yeah, but you two are
Sure,
still
Mike appreciates what you've done.
murder.
You should feel proud. Now that I mentioned Mike, I believe it's finally time to end this and give him his freedom. Your Honor, we hereby surrender to the court for our crime.
While I am saddened by your tragedy, taking the law into your own hands is unacceptable. Due process
Yeah, but the law
is the
sucks.
birthright of every human being.
So this is finally the end, I suppose. You win again, Mr. Phoenix, Wright? Mock me if you must.
I don't plan to, Miss Von Karma. You did what a prosecutor
would.
has to do.
Bah! Don't pretend like you know what being a prosecutor means. It is only by chance and due to the admirable conscience of the real culprits that an innocent man wasn't found guilty. If someone is lacking in their duties here, it is you, Mr. Phoenix, Wright? That is all I have to say to you. Your Honor, the prosecution has nothing else to add.
Understood. Mr. Wright, does the defense have any final statements?
The trial's about to come to a close, and Mike is almost a free man once again. I believe all the questions surrounding the murder have been answered, and every piece of evidence is accounted for. Or have they really? No, it couldn't be. Could it?
Nick, I think my sis urgently wants to talk to you.
What? How do you know that?
It's like, how should I put it? I can feel this strange, urgent sting in my soul.
Must be important then. Alright, go ahead. Let's hear her out.
Right, channeling her now.
Oh, your sister dead?
Phoenix,
Oh.
long time no see.
Hello.
Indeed. It's been a while, Mia. Maya said you wanted to talk to me.
Yes, Phoenix, you can't let the trial end here.
Come again, Chief?
Don't make me repeat myself. You're about to lose the truth.
So I was correct. There is more to this case.
It's good to see you've learned to think for yourself. So why are you not doing anything?
To be honest, I'm not quite sure if I should act on just a hunch.
Have you forgotten what I've taught you? How can your client depend on you if you doubt yourself? Listen carefully, Phoenix. If something is in the court record, it's more than a mere hunch. Maya has been keeping me up to date with the details of the case. Haven't you noticed all the loose ends? All the questions that are left floating in the air? The truth is veiled behind them. And if the trial is allowed to come to a close now, then it will be lost forever, Phoenix.
Then the confession we heard earlier is a lie?
To them, it's the truth. Because unlike you, they do not have all the pieces of the puzzle. All the answers are in the court record. Think, Phoenix, the second note found on the scene exists for a reason.
Since Mr. Wright seems to be preoccupied in chatting with his aide, I believe we have finally reached the conclusion of this extraordinarily confusing case. As we have heard a full confession, which is backed up by evidence, I see no reason to prolong this trial.
Now's the time, Phoenix. You can turn this case around one more time.
This court finds the defendant, Mike November.
Objection!
I leave the rest to you.
Her sister just
starting
living
to run
her
out of patience.
soul.
No verdict good enough for you? What are you objecting to now? Do you want a super not guilty verdict?
The spirit of my long-dead mentor made me do it? But that's beside the point. This trial must continue.
Objection, Your Honor. The defense is turning this tragedy of a trial into a travesty. He has already won the case. There is no reason to continue. In all my years of knowing foolish fools, I have never seen such foolish foolishness. Truly, Mr. Phoenix Wright has reached the very apex of being a fool.
What's with you and the word fool?
Hence I W, the Uber Fool.
This isn't about winning. It's about the truth, Miss Von Karma. You may call me what you like, but it doesn't change the fact that there's still some inexplicable details that need to be addressed.
After 3 days of investigating and now a full confession, one would think we finally know what happened. Some menial details are hardly going to change the big picture.
Give up right here.
I do have to agree with Miss Von Karma. It seems very, very far-fetched to think that.
Mr. Wright, it's okay. We're prepared to face the punishment for our crime.
Indeed. You have committed a very serious crime, and you'll have to answer for it. But you two didn't murder Captain Harvey. Someone else beat you to it.
What?
What the?
What?
Order in the court! Mr. Wright, are you serious with this claim?
Objection! Objection, I say! I don't even have to say anything else! Listen to him!
That's right. Allow me to repeat my claim. The crime that Dr. Siegfried and Lieutenant Victoria committed is attempted murder. That's the most they can be held accountable for.
You're sure about this?
A man dies but once. Therefore, he can only be murdered once. I have my reasons to believe that by the time the bomb went off, Captain Harvey had already been killed by someone else.
Objection!
Oh, yeah,
Wake up,
because of
Mr.
his
Phoenix
head
Wright.
injury.
The notion that such a murder exists is totally ludicrous. It's impossible for anyone we don't already know about to have entered the Iron Chamber at any point. Just take a look at the keycard logs.
I disagree. While these logs give us a lot of information, they may not be telling the whole truth.
Oh yeah, because
As
he
it
could
turns out, log entries can be deleted.
Why, this greatly undermines the credibility of these logs.
It really doesn't, Your Honor.
Why not?
Mr. Phoenix Wright, did you honestly believe I was not aware of the possibility of deleting logs? But that's all you can do! You can only delete logs, not edit them as you please. I haven't got the faintest idea of what he is raving on about. So I say let the Uber Fool explain his foolishly foolish foolishness. Mr. Phoenix Wright, tell us when this mystery killer supposedly entered the Iron Chamber.
Let's see. Captain Harvey entered his office just before 10 o'clock in the morning and met up with Dr. Siegfried almost immediately afterwards. Naturally, the true murderer had to enter later than that. Staff Sergeant Tennant was next and fought with Harvey until noon. From there, 10 minutes passed until Mike arrived, but Harvey was still alive at that point. Mike left a couple of minutes later at 12:15. The alarms went off at 12:35 when the auxiliary generator powered up. So that's a 20-minute gap the true murderer could have used.
This must be it. Simple. They entered after Mike November had left.
But all people on this list except Mike November have an alibi for that time. Dr. Jason Siegfried and Lieutenant Irene Victoria were at the barracks waiting for Private November to return. And Staff Sergeant Tennant was supposedly lost in the regiment's woods, with security footage showing him heading away from the Iron Chamber's direction after leaving the mess hall.
In that fancy outfit.
So, unless you wish to claim Mike November did commit this crime after all, Captain Harvey's killer cannot be any of those people.
Exactly.
Huh?
And since we know that Mike November is innocent, it means we should turn our suspicion towards the persons, or person, not appearing on this list. And my prime candidate for the mystery killer is Captain Adele Renard,
I was right.
the regiment's security chief.
Order! Mr. Wright, these are some extremely grave accusations. What evidence do you have to base this claim on?
I have all the evidence I need, Your Honor. At least Mia seems to think I do.
Very well. Miss Von Karma, any opinions?
I have voiced my opinion long ago. This is foolishness. The outcome of this trial has already been sealed. Prolonging it is merely turning a knife in my wound.
Right. Does the defense request that this Captain Renard be summoned to testify?
There is no need to send anyone for me, Your Honor, for I am present.
Oh, good. Then we shouldn't have a problem.
That's
I am afraid that we do.
Pardon?
I would like to make some things absolutely, positively clear. I refuse to testify to this court.
Come again, Captain?
First, I have no interest in partaking in this charade. Unlike that wretch of a defense attorney, I have dignity I wish to preserve. Secondly, I have the right against self-incrimination, as Prosecutor Von Karma reminded us earlier. Mr. Wright wants me to testify purely so he can make a villain out of me.
Captain Renard, you do understand that if you refuse to testify, you also forfeit your chance to say anything in your defense?
Of course. This slimy attorney cannot possibly dream to pin the blame on me. After all, I have nothing to do with this murder. That is all you will be getting from me.
What a jerk! Think you can manage without a testimony?
It might be tough, but I think I might know how to coax him to testify.
Well, if the witness refuses to testify, we'll just have to turn to Mr. Wright's evidence.
Certainly. I just wonder, why would you make such a stupid move, Captain?
What was that?
I asked you a simple question. Why make such a bad move?
Pah! What are you on about?
Oh, it just seems to me that you're absolutely terrified of the prospect of your alibi being examined by a simple defense attorney.
I made my reasons very clear. This is slander.
Very well. I certainly won't stop you from handing control of your fate over to me. By refusing to testify, you've put yourself in a completely indefensible position. And it'll make my job a whole lot easier too, since you'll be forced to sit and listen when I tell the court all about how you murdered Captain Harvey. A shame, really. I expected more of a fight from you, Renard.
Mr. Wright, that is quite enough. The witness has made their decision. Now, if we could please move on to the evidence.
Wait. I changed my mind. I will testify after all.
Of course.
Really now?
Having observed this trial, I have noticed that this court has the tendency to swallow most any scenario the defense feeds it. No offense, Your Honor.
I see.
It is simply best for everyone that I keep my right to defend myself against Mr. Wright's outrageous lies, even if it means I have to legitimize this pointlessness.
As you wish. Seeing as you're already on the stand, Miss Von Karma, please proceed with the formalities.
Witness, please state your name and occupation for the court.
Captain Adele Renard, head of security at the AN Peacekeeping Regiment in Angeles Bay. Mark my words, Mr. Wright. You will not get away with this slander without repercussions.
Nick, you had better do your best. A defamation suit would mess up our budget, and I really don't want to give up my burger jar.
You have a burger jar? Then why am I the one always paying for your food?
Oh yeah, Nick, you have a witness glaring at you from the stand.
Yeah, right.
We're really starting from scratch here, but if there's more to be found, I'll dig it up. The stakes are high for both of us. And let's see which one of us has the better poker face.
First, I'd like to hear about your alibi for the day of the murder, Captain Renard. So without further ado, witness testify.
I'm almost sorry to disappoint the court, but I really don't have much to say about my alibi. It was a normal workday for me, at least until the alarms went off. That means I spent the entire day in my office and didn't leave once, not even for lunch. Harvey stayed in his office and I stayed in mine. So I cannot possibly fathom how you can think that I could have killed him.
There. That wasn't so hard after all, was it?
I need not your disrespectful commentary, cretin. Start your cross-examination so we can end this mockery of justice.
I believe I should be the one. Yes, what he said. Please proceed with the cross-examination, Mr. Wright.
I'm almost sorry to disappoint the court, but I really don't have much to say about my alibi.
Hold it! Why not just comply in the first place, then?
As I said, I have dignity and had faith in the court before they allowed for these shameful antics of yours. But that has nothing to do with why you asked me to testify. Next statement.
But...
Next statement.
Fine. Be that way.
It was a normal workday for me, at least until the alarms went off.
Hold it! So, what does your normal workday involve?
I sit in my office, planning security shifts, inspections, and so forth. And I respond to any possible alerts that may arise. Luckily, that is a relatively rare occurrence.
And what did you do once the alarms went off?
As per protocol, I acknowledged the alarm using the security console in my office, and headed out to investigate the cause. When I arrived, the military police had already found Harvey's body and were securing the area. I'll have to make sure they receive a proper commendation for their swift response. Either way, it was the first time I left my office that day. That means I spent the entire day in my office and didn't leave once, not even for lunch.
Hold it! Not even for lunch, huh?
Yes, precisely. Like Harvey, I brought my own lunch. I simply do not have the time to be running between the dining facility and my office. I have to stay ever vigilant and efficient.
So you ate lunch in your office?
Crying out loud, yes! How many times do I have to drill it in your thick cerebrum that I did not leave my office until the alarms went off?
So, what did you have for lunch?
Objection! Get to the point, Mr. Phoenix Wright!
I'm getting there. Just give me a moment.
Harvey stayed in his office and I stayed in mine. So I cannot possibly fathom how you can think that I could have killed him.
Objection! So, your testimony boils down to, I never left my office, therefore I couldn't have done it.
Exactly. I would like to emphasize the part, could not have done it.
Really? Because I'd like to emphasize the part where you're blatantly lying.
How dare you?
Well, either that, or you're really bad at your duties. You see, when we talked to Staff Sergeant Tennant a few days ago, he had this to say about the alarms.
What was on, though, was that they went on for like a whole 10 minutes. It was like an air raid was going on or something.
It also happens to be that the sirens go silent only after the alarm has been acknowledged by the security chief. via the fingerprint scanner inside the security office. So tell me, Captain, why did it take you 10 minutes to acknowledge the alarm the explosion caused, if you really sat before the security console the entire time?
That can be easily explained.
It can?
Yes, it's quite simple.
Very well, witness. Please explain to the court why it took you so much time to react to the alarm.
Of course. Fine, I admit it. I was not in my office the entire time. I am a human. I have certain needs, urges, and also vices. What I mean to say is that I was out for a smoke. Unfortunately, I had an embarrassing little mishap. I forgot my keycard inside my office. I couldn't get into my office right away, but luckily I found a solution. I logged into the lobby's computer and used that to print a new keycard. That's why it took so long.
Witness, do remember that you are under oath. Omitting things is not a wise thing to do.
I am aware. Please accept my most sincere apologies. I was hoping I could avoid divulging information regarding my little mistake. The courtroom gallery is full of my co-workers after all. Well, mostly former co-workers after this trial.
I think your real mistake lies somewhere else entirely. Your testimony. Time to turn up the heat.
Mr. Wright, you may continue cross-examining the witness.
I'd be more than happy to, Your Honor.
Fine, I admit it. I was not in my office the entire time.
Hold it! Witness, that is grossly incongruent with your earlier testimony.
Is that tasteless tie of yours perhaps on too tight? You should be glad that I decided to grace you with even one testimony, ingrate.
Hey! Nobody mocks my tie! It's not tasteless, it's a classic!
Psst. Maya, is my tie really tasteless?
Nick, now is really not the time!
Yes, you're right. Continue with your testimony, witness.
I am a human. I have certain needs, urges, and also vices.
Hold it! Please elaborate, witness.
During my career in intelligence, I have learned that everyone, no matter how pious, has one or two skeletons in their closet. Shameful secrets or guilty pleasures that require tending to. I can openly admit that I need a cigarette break every now and then. When the alarms went off, I was indulging in my personal vice. What I mean to say is that I was out for a smoke.
Hold it! So you don't have lunch with the others, but you still find the time for smoke breaks?
Yes. Nicotine is a harsh mistress, and I absolutely cannot risk smoking in my office. I wouldn't want the sprinklers to go off on the sensitive electronics.
But it's your duty to keep an eye on the alarm console.
Don't tell me how to do my job, Mr. Wright. I was right outside the building and just about to light my cigarette. But then I heard the alarms go off in the distance. Under normal circumstances, I could be back in my office in mere seconds.
But that's not what happened, was it?
No. Lady Luck was not on my side that day. Unfortunately, I had an embarrassing little mishap. I forgot my keycard inside my office.
Hold it! That's... How do you manage to do something like that?
I dare say,
Everybody
I make
forgets
mistakes
something.
far less often than you do, Mr. Wright. Human error is always a factor, and nobody's perfect.
Franziska seems to disagree.
That's still a horrible excuse!
It's the truth, so suck it, Mr. Wright, unless you can prove any different.
Oh, I'll find something. Just you wait.
I couldn't get into my office right away, but luckily I found a solution.
Hold it! Do tell the court your solution.
I would have already done so if you would stop interrupting me with your obnoxious shouting.
Oh, go ahead then.
I logged into the lobby's computer and used that to print a new keycard. That's
You
why
already
it took
said
so
that.
long.
You just issued yourself a keycard to the security chief's office? Sounds like a huge security risk.
It really isn't. Issuing keycards to secure areas can only be authorized with my fingerprints. Making a spare card for myself is a breeze. However, the process takes time, and not even I can speed it up. I couldn't help but wait, but I assure you I acknowledged the alarm as soon as I only could.
What happened to the keycard you issued?
I destroyed it, as per protocol, along with the logs of it being used. Terribly sorry.
Oh, great. Destroying evidence like a pro.
Mr. Wright, the security chief's testimony seems quite solid.
Of course. It is what happened, after all.
Is the defense quite satisfied? Can we proceed to the verdict now?
To be honest, I'm quite disappointed.
That you couldn't make a villain out of me?
No! I thought you could come up with a better lie!
Preposterous! How about you stop saying everything your spit brings into your mouth and show evidence that actually proves something?
That's just what I'm about to do! Take that!
That looks like a keycard.
Yes, Your Honor. These cards allow access around the peacekeeping regiment. However, what's important here is not the card itself, but rather the process that goes into making one. Captain Renard, let's recall what you just claimed. You issued yourself a new keycard almost immediately after you heard the alarms, correct?
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
How curious. Since the printer takes at least 15 minutes to produce each keycard, but according to Staff Sergeant Tennant, the alarm sirens rung out for only 10. You also stated in your testimony that not even you, the security chief, could speed up the process.
Yes, it does seem quite odd, doesn't it? But...
Witness, what is the meaning of this? Explain yourself at once!
Actually, what happened is that at the very moment the door to my office closed behind me, I checked for my keycard and noticed it was missing. So, in reality, I started up the process 5 minutes before the alarms. Simple as that.
Enough with the lies! You just claimed you could get in your office in mere moments if the alarms went off. Yet you said that happened before you could even light a smoke. You couldn't possibly have started the process 5 minutes early. The conclusion we can draw from all this is that you were in fact nowhere near your office at the time.
Fine. Since you think yourself so goddamn perceptive, how about you tell me where I was then?
Oh, I will. Let's take a look at the regiment's map with some additions made by Sergeant Tennant. Based on everything we know, I'd say you were around here. Take that!
The forest?
Yes, to be more precise, he was on his way back from the Iron Chamber using a small trail to avoid the cameras, after having murdered Captain Janice Harvey.
Objection! So sorry, Mr. Wright, but you have a critical flaw in your argument.
What?
I can provide you with the keycard logs to my door that day if you so desire. Since you assume I used my own card instead of a disposable one, my logs should be there, as I can't delete them myself. But I'll save you the trouble and assure you you'll find nothing. Would you care to explain that?
Renard's right. If he used his own card to enter, it would leave a log. But that just means he must have used something else.
Very well. Would this piece of evidence suffice as explanation? Take that!
Yet another keycard?
Yes. This one is the spare keycard to the security office. Captain Renard has been storing it inside the office, so no one else could have gotten their hands on it. Clearly, you used this to enter and then wipe the logs.
Enough. This has gone way too far. I would like to remind this court that I am being accused by this man essentially because I did not see Captain Harvey that day. I had no reason to even think about killing him.
Really? Would you care to testify about your ties to Captain Harvey then?
I suppose I must. even if the thought of having to answer any more of your asinine questions makes me sick. Although, I am genuinely curious what kind of insane motive you'll come up with.
The next testimony shouldn't be too hard to crack, thanks to all the evidence we've got. But I can't help but dread what sort of can of worms we're about to pop open if we keep digging deeper.
Time.
You could say I was aware of Captain Harvey's existence, but the internal affairs of the engineer company have no relevance to me unless they pose a security threat. To sum it up, I guess you could call Harvey and I co-workers. Besides, I was employed by the Army until recently. It's not like we were ever interested in AN affairs.
Hopefully, this time you are telling the truth, Captain.
Just let the raving idiot in blue have a go at it, so we can all go home.
We're onto something here. Go get him, Nick!
You're right, Maya. Now's not the time to doubt. We'll see how far this road takes us.
You could say I was aware of Captain Harvey's existence.
Hold it!
What do you mean by that exactly?
It's part of my job description to know who runs the show around the regiment. Captain Bear in Signals, Captain Wilco in CBRN, Captain Kurtz in the Special Forces, and, of course, Captain Harvey in Engineering proper. The list goes on. Captain Harvey was just one of the more notorious ones due to his practices. But the internal affairs of the engineer company have no relevance to me unless they pose a security threat.
Hold it! Surely you were aware of Harvey hazing the privates. Why didn't you act?
I follow the protocol, not rumors. The regiment staff should report any potential hazards or misconduct to me, and only then can we start an internal investigation. I received no such reports, thus I wasn't obligated to act. Again, what happens in the engineer company is no skin off my back. To sum it up, I guess you could call Harvey and I co-workers.
Hold it! So how often were you in contact with Captain Harvey?
Don't get me wrong. I meant co-workers in the sense that we work for allied nations. Harvey wasn't the type of person you'd like to go out for drinks with. We barely ever saw each other, let alone talked. He had his duties, and I had mine. Besides, I was employed by the Army until recently. It's not like we were ever interested in AN affairs.
There we have it. He completely denies it without a hint of hesitation. Then again, why wouldn't he? Under normal circumstances, I shouldn't even know about this piece of evidence, let alone carry it on me. Everything that happened on Absolution Day is the result of what transpired on that fateful day in the Eregia mountain range. So in order to establish Renard's motive, we must travel 4 years back in time and get to the bottom of it all.
Objection! Captain Adele Renard, before you joined the Allied Nations, you were an intelligence officer in the Army, isn't that correct?
I served in the Army, yes. But Captain Harvey never did, so I failed to see how that would create a connection between the two of us.
You can stop feigning ignorance, Captain, because you knew Janice Harvey, and you knew him extremely well. After all, the Army gave the Allied Nations professional assistance in investigating the Helio 6 incident, and I bet you were there as well.
How do you...
I have the investigation documents right here, Renard. The entire case file on the Helio 6 incident, with a disclosure about the Army offering professional assistance in the form of intelligence experts. You can deny your involvement all you want, but I bet if we send for your service record, we'll find you took part in the investigation as well. Do you still have the guts to claim you barely knew him?
Why, there's no question about it. This would establish a connection beyond any doubt.
What's so funny?
I never expected a fool like you to find that out. This report would indeed be solid evidence of a link between us. However, there's something important you should know about it.
Huh?
I have no idea where and how Mr. Wright acquired these documents, but by presenting them to this court, he has made the worst move of his career. You see, these documents are classified. Not only does it make that report illegal evidence, but possessing it without authorization is a crime in itself. So if you want to find your felon, you need to look no further than the defense bench.
Mr. Wright, this is no minor offense. What do you have to say for yourself?
Hey now, hold on!
Crap.
Captain Renard raises a very valid point. Presenting these files would have been a bad idea if they were still classified. However, as of February, they have been declassified upon the official end of Operation Aegis, the peace mission in Aresia. The report itself states this.
You just don't know when to quit, do you?
Dodged a bullet right there. He certainly isn't running out of underhanded tricks.
Very well. I did, in fact, take part in the investigation of the Helios 6 incident. In fact, I led the whole investigation. Not that there was much to investigate aside from a smoldering crater and a pile of corpses.
But the Allied Nations is independent of any single nation's armed forces. How did you end up in charge?
It was first suspected the incident was the result of insurgent activity, so naturally the army had its own interests in mind. It was simply a matter of offering professional aid when they requested it. The Allied Nations was happy to accept my expertise and discretion.
But in the end, the investigation didn't really succeed, did it? What went wrong?
You may have noticed that investigating an aftermath of an explosion is not an easy task. Almost all worthwhile evidence was destroyed in the blast, and the 3 surviving witnesses were of no help.
You said almost all evidence. You did recover something then?
Call it a miracle, but one of the shipping manifests of the Helios 6 crates survived the explosion, mostly intact. It had everything we needed to know on the technical side. Shipping date, and even Captain Harvey's signature. This manifest tells us the exact amount of explosives that were in the depot. 3 small crates of Helios 6. And it just so happens to be that I have it with me right here.
I think we'd all like to know why you are carrying evidence from that case on you, Captain Renard.
It's a legit question with a simple answer. When Captain Harvey became a rotting corpse, the case too became practically unsolvable. I took the liberty of going through all the evidence from the Helios 6 incident again and archiving it. After this trial, I was to deliver the item to the Allied Nations archives to await the next evidence transfer.
I'd like to take a look at that.
Oh, if you must. But it won't do you any good.
Let's see. Shipment accounting for 3 small crates of Helios 6. Hold on a minute. This can't be right.
Captain Renard.
What is it now?
Who found this piece of evidence?
Yours truly. Not to brag, but it was quite a crucial part of the investigation, since the AN's logistics department had somehow managed to misplace their original shipping documents.
In that case, I hate to break it to you, but this manifest of yours is a fake.
Who the hell do you think you are, Mr. Wright? What sort of basis do you have to claim that this manifest isn't real? This is the only surviving copy of the shipment's details. What's next? You're going to suggest that we travel back in time and compare the manifest before the explosion happens?
Invert that. We're going to stay right here in the present, and something from the past is going to come to us.
A new piece of decisive evidence from 4 years ago? Don't make me laugh.
Oh yeah, the guy's bomber
possible evidence regarding the incident with
probably
me.
Still has the actual.
Every last
it says
piece.
about all the
or so you think.
Explosives.
A single piece of evidence slipped through your manipulative fingers. and it'll expose your investigation for the sham it was. Take that!
And what is that supposed to be?
This is a letter written by Sergeant Charlie November of the 1st Special Engineering Company. He handed this letter over to be mailed on the very day he lost his life.
How touching. But what's the point of bringing up this little sob story?
Because attached to his letter was this. Take that! Captain Renard, meet Mr. Blast. He will be your downfall.
Ah, how does this childish scribble prove anything at all?
It's not actually the drawing that's important, but rather what it's drawn on. A Helio 6 crate shipping manifest, accounting for 2 small crates, and a large one.
What? That's impossible.
Yeah, but you're
This
in
does
trouble.
put you neck deep in hot water, doesn't it, Captain? After all, you're the one who conveniently found, or should I say forged, the manifest you used as evidence in your investigation.
This manifest was recovered during the forensic investigation in Aresia. How do you have the nerve to just pull a paper like that from thin air and claim it's the real thing instead? Even if it was genuinely from one of the crates the 1st Special Engineering Company received, the date has been ripped off, so you cannot prove that the manifest belongs to the crates of Helio 6 that were destroyed in the
Well, he
blast
does
that
have
day.
Oh, but I can.
But how?
I'll show you how. Take that! This photograph was also enclosed in the letter. Why don't we take a look at it?
Why, that's the same photo from earlier.
Precisely. This photograph shows Sergeant Charlie November inside the 1st Special Engineering Ammo Depot, with crates of Helio 6 in the background.
Nice try, Mr. Wright, but we can only see 2 crates of Helio 6 here, and both are small. And don't even think about trying to claim the one in Harvey's photo is large. We see too little of the actual crate to make any conclusions.
That wasn't my point, Captain. Even though we can't see the large crate in this picture, we can see something just as crucial.
Would you care to point it out for us, Mr. Wright?
I would be glad to. Take that! There were actually 2 things in this photo that prove the manifest I presented is without a doubt the real one. Firstly, the timestamp is marked as April 4th, the day of the Helio 6 incident.
That won't cut it. That manifest could still have been torn from any prior shipment.
Funny you should put it like that. Take a look at the crate Sergeant November is posing behind. You could see something's been ripped from it. Now, if we were to turn this paper around and compare the rip on the crate, I'd say we have a perfect match. Which means that this manifest must be from the shipment of Helio 6 that caused the destruction of the 1st Special Engineering Company.
No! This must be a mistake. It has to be. Some sort of gross clerical aberration.
The difference between these 2 manifests is indeed quite gross. It amounts to about 20 kilograms of Helio 6 being unaccounted for. Curiously enough, that exact amount was recovered from a group of arrested Aresian insurgents in the same region.
The
Oh,
explosive
he's trolling.
trafficking claim.
Or training.
How do you know all this, you miserable reprobate?
A little birdie told me so to say. Let's connect the dots, shall we? 20 kilograms of Helio 6 was found upon the arrest of some Aresian insurgents, in the same region Captain Harvey's unit had their camp. The manifest you found just happens to be 20 kilograms short of what actually was in the ammo depot of the 1st Special Engineering Company. This whole thing reeks of cover-up.
That's enough. I've had it with your conjecture, you scum. I had nothing to do with the explosives or insurgents. There'd be nothing in it for me.
I beg to differ. You had quite an incentive. Take that!
Money? I fancy myself a bit of a numismatic, but I haven't seen bills like this before.
Yes, Your Honor. This is foreign money, and we found it in Captain Renard's office.
Why, this looks like a small fortune to me.
You 2 would dare ransack my office?
So you admit that all this money is yours, Renard? Would you like to explain where all this came from?
Those are my savings. Yes, that's right.
But both the Army and Allied nations pay their personnel's salary in dollars. Why are your savings in foreign bills?
I had them exchanged.
Yeah, because he traded
I prefer their charming exoticness to the faces of dead presidents.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't help wondering just how much this pile of money is actually worth.
Sorry, but I haven't been counting lately.
That's fine, because I can tell you right away. The total worth of all this money is zero.
Zero? You mean to say that all this money is worthless?
Yes.
Well, that sucks.
Because this money is an old Arisian currency. It became obsolete after the Arisian money reform, which happened soon after the Helio 6 tragedy, as evidenced by this newspaper article. This means Captain Renard acquired all of this money during his Arisian mission.
But how is that possible?
Sergeant Charlie November's letter mentions a shady uniformed man not wearing AN colors meeting up with Captain Harvey. Someone from the Army, apparently. They were arguing over a delivery. I believe I have a pretty good picture of what happened between you and Harvey. You persuaded him to help you acquire Helio 6 to sell. And then you double-crossed him. You planned for him to take the fall all along, and then made sure you had the stranglehold afterwards. And for that reason, you made sure you led the investigation of the Helio 6 incident. You could manipulate the evidence as you please to threaten Harvey and hide your own involvement. Captain Renard, this money is your reward for supplying the group of insurgents with 20 kilograms of Helio 6.
They got really enemies.
Do you deny it?
No. In fact, I admit it.
You do?
Do I look like I'm trying to crack a joke here? It is as you say, for the most part. So, let me tell you a story. A story of a weak-willed, pathetic man who deserved to be used. During my stay in Arisia, I made a few contacts, so to say. Contacts who were willing to pay handsomely for certain supplies. They requested me to deliver them explosives or whatever follies they were up to. I couldn't care less about their cause, but I do enjoy a challenge when one presents itself. Thus, I decided to give them proper bang for their buck. I went for the strongest explosive I could only find, and that so happened to be Helio 6. It didn't take too much time to figure out the weakest link in the delivery chain. Captain Janice Harvey and his band of do-gooders. Harvey was cynical and self-centered. He was easy enough to talk into helping me out with promises of immense wealth. The idiot didn't second-guess me when I told him the explosives would be delivered to the army. Of course, I never intended him to get anything other than the blame. Soon enough, thanks to a logistics error, extra Helio 6 was shipped for the company to use. I used my skills as an intelligence officer to make sure no specifics of the delivery remained in the AN databases. In hindsight, it was almost too easy. Harvey handed the explosives over and agreed to be paid as soon as I had received the money. After all, who wouldn't trust an Army intelligence officer? So I delivered the Helio 6 to my contacts, and they gave me a briefcase full of money as a reward. Not that I ever planned to use any of it. The thrill of the challenge itself was all I wanted.
You monster!
Save your preaching. Helio 6 cannot be detonated without special chemical detonators, and those were never part of the deal. The insurgents were totally unaware of that, of course. Just as they thought I was unaware that the money they gave me was soon to be worthless. This left me with a little dilemma. A gullible AN captain expecting payment, and a bunch of insolent, deceitful insurgents who would no doubt soon notice their ultra-high-yield explosives were useless to them. So I blew the whistle on both of them. The insurgents were arrested, and it would only be a matter of time when they would track the explosives back to the corrupt Captain Harvey. So, I screwed over both a corrupt officer and the violent insurgents. The Helios 6 was recovered, and both parties were to be arrested, which really makes me the hero of this story.
The audacity of that claim!
The insurgents had all the reasons to rat you out upon arrest, Renard.
Of course they had. It was a calculated risk, but since the AN do-gooders are bound by law to surrender any arrested Arisian nationals to the government forces, well, let's just say our insurgents didn't feel very talkative after the firing squad was done with them. Of course, I was already off the hook, and could have just left it there, but then I became curious.
Curious? Of what?
Curious of just how far I could push him.
Stop talking in riddles, Adele Renard!
As you wish. I let Harvey know who he had really supplied with the explosives, and the fact it would in all probability result in him spending the rest of his life in prison. I had also made sure the poor fool had absolutely no evidence of my involvement. It was just a matter of suggesting that the company would most definitely turn on him. So the only way he could escape his fate was to silence them all. Perhaps they could all meet with a terrible accident. Explosives are dangerous, after all.
You're saying it was your idea? You killed
weird.
them all, you bastard!
Excuse me? I did no such thing. Harvey was the one who armed the detonator.
Why do they look like that?
Out of his own free will. So my little experiment was a great success. But I wasn't quite done with Harvey. Oh no. You should have seen his face.
I'm gonna stop there, because it's a long video. So, yeah, it's actually getting pretty good. I'm finally gonna see if he's guilty or not. More likely he is. I did not expect that at all. So, hope you guys liked the reaction, and have a nice day.